Hi, everyone. I'm Christine Tulley, President and Executive Writing Coach at Defend, Publish, and Lead, and welcome to episode 201, the Academic Author Newsletter. On the podcast, I talk sometimes about resources provided by the Textbook and Authors Association. I've mentioned many times that we don't have a whole lot of podcast sponsors. I only will do those when it's somebody or an organization that I believe in. And I am a firm believer in the Textbook and Academic Authors Association because of the very, very cheap membership rate and also all the great resources that they provide. So what we're going to talk about today is their newsletter. It's a resource that you get mailed. It's like an old school physical newsletter. For those of you watching on YouTube, I'm waving my copy so you can see what it looks like. It's nice and shiny. It's nice. But I wanted to show, and I will do this on screen, and just talk about what the heck is in this kind of thing, and why do you want something like this? I know many of you have already joined TAA, which is great. And for the record, if you get interested in them, there's a link in my show notes. You can join with a discount code to give you a discount if you're interested in doing it. But here's why I would argue this is a great resource for writing and productivity. So for me, one of the things that I mentioned this on the podcast all the time, is that one, our academic writing processes change constantly. They change by the semester, they change by your interest, they change sometimes, like, for example, it could be something like you were writing all the time in your office, but now that location doesn't work for you anymore. It could be something like your writing has changed because now you realize I don't have 2 hours of a big block of time. I only have this weird 30-minute period all over, the course of my day. So there can be lots of reasons why your progress might be changed or slowed. And so one of the reasons why I like something like a newsletter is it comes out, I think it might be quarterly. This is one part where I'm not totally sure, but it comes out frequently during the year. And one reason I like it is it's got a bunch of tips in there to fine tune my writing over the course of the semester. And some of the tips are relevant to what I'm working on in the moment, and some of them aren't, but there's always something in there that I want. And it just changes the way that I think about academic writing. And I like how the newsletter really adjusts with the kind of stuff that I'm working on at the moment. So here's I want to just walk through some of the things that are in this kind of a newsletter and why why this might resonate with some of you. For the record, just as a quick overview, it really is a mix of some kind of practical tips on a specific academic authoring issue, and then also some more general productivity tips, along with just announcements about events and all that kind of stuff. So, what this issue had that kind of caught my eye and gave me the idea for this episode is that there's some stuff in there that, as an academic author, it's tough to find out information about. And so, because I'm in the middle of a process with a book going to publication at the moment, so it's, very, very exciting. I was really paying attention to some of these tips in there about publishing contracts and like figuring out royalties and all that kind of stuff. I know you can do some Googling and find out some things, but I just like the way that the newsletter talks about this from the academic author's perspective, not from the publisher's perspective. So, the first article in there is about your publishing contract. The article is called "Stressed About Your Publishing Contract. These tips from an intellectual property attorney can help." So this is a question we get a fair amount at Defend, Publish, and Lead about things like intellectual property in terms of, who owns this once I put this idea out in a journal or in a book, or who owns the rights to it. For the record, for anybody that does any coaching with us, one of the things that we do is that we are not allowed to use any of your intellectual property. We can't tell anyone about it. We can't tell anyone you're working with us. We can't use it. So, we already have all those protections built in place, but that might not be the same with a publisher that you work with. And so I really like that the tips are in there that you can take a look and see how to make sure that your publishing contract really protects you as an author. So that's something in there that stuck with me that I thought was a really good, a helpful tip. The other thing that I liked in here, I talked about some generic writing tips, and I don't want to call them generic in like a bad sense, but just meaning they can apply to no matter what project you're working on, your textbook, your book chapter, your very first, co-authored book, whatever the issues are. And so the tip this time was about blocking double the time you need to do writing and committing to doing half the writing you're supposed to be doing in that time frame. So one of the things that I think is really interesting about this tip is um the committing, if we're kind of thinking like they give the example of this, that let's say if you think you're going to be able to complete something in 2 hours, don't do that. Block the time for like a full morning or an afternoon, and then committing to get half of your project done. I know we work in much smaller slices of time at Defend, Publish, and Lead. I talk a lot about this, about how most of the people coming to us do not have full long days to be writing or whatever. So if we think about this in maybe a more practical sense, let's say you have an hour to work on some writing. So this particular tip would say, see if you can get yourself 2 hours and commit to doing half of the work you thought you were going to do. It may all even out in the end, but it gives you a better likelihood to getting your work done, because almost always writing takes longer than we think it will. And so this is basically recognizing that possibility that maybe you're going to need more time, and maybe you're not going to get as much done even with that a bigger amount of time. So I kind of like that tip to just think about it. And I know for me, I've got a couple of half-hour chunks that I'm going to try to see if I can blow them up to an hour, or at least to like 45 minutes, and then just commit to getting half of the work done. And of course, then you get the win if you do get it done, and you can keep going and get a little more done. So I liked that tip a lot. I thought that was great in the newsletter. Um, there's some tips in there on finding a freelance editor. Certainly, lots of places do editing. We do editing, although most people come to us for a lot more than editing in terms of revision or teaching you how to do your own writing strategies. So you're able to handle some of the writing tasks on your own without us, and you don't need us anymore. Other things that are in here are some announcements about conferences coming up. Um, there are TAA, Textbook and Academic Authors Association, has a conference. We've talked about that before on the podcast, so that announcement is in there and you can check that out. But here's some other things that are really great resources. Did you know, I didn't even know this till I got this newsletter, that as a Textbook and Academic Authors Association member, you can share your book contract and your royalty statement and get it actually reviewed by somebody who is an accountant that will actually figure out if the math works in your favor. This is totally free. So one of the things I love about this idea is I'm in the middle of about to submit something again to get an advanced contract on a book. I definitely am going to take advantage of this service. So this is something I don't know of any other organization offering. And so this is another reason why this is the only organization we're partnering with at the moment, because of this kind of stuff that actually is practical and helps academic authors. So there are QR codes in the new newsletter. If you're on YouTube, you can look at that. That's something that you get as part of your membership, and memberships at this moment are very, very cheap right now. So check you can just look at Textbook and Academic Authors Association, just look them up. You can also look at the link in our show notes and you can get a discount code there. So other things going on with this is if you are a member, you also have access to free webinars. So I actually get to do one of their webinars this time around on what to do after you get rejected. So somebody says no to your manuscript, or no to your book, or no to your textbook. What do you do? So I get to do one of those webinars that will be coming up. So that's on their schedule. But also things like there's topics there about AI. There's also topics about figuring out how to manage writing anxiety and how to turn that into serenity. I like that one because it's really addressing the feelings about writing. And then also just some practical tips. How do you make sure you move from a draft to being done or finished? So those are the 4 that are coming up next. And I love these because they're just a mix of things like feelings about writing, maybe something new you want to explore about writing, like AI help. And then, more practical things like I got, some problem solving. What do I do? I got rejected. What do I do to fix that? So all really great stuff in there. Some other things that I think are really, really great to check out. would be looking at the list. So this is another way that you can get some very cool tips in here. There's also an article on a copy editor suggestions for typing up your prose. Here's another thing. You guys have heard me say this on the podcast many times, but I only like writing things that I can use immediately or they take 5 minutes or less. And in this newsletter, there is a list in here. So if I was going to write today, so I'm waiving my newsletter for audio listens only, I could throw the newsletter in my laptop bag with my laptop, flip open to this page, and if I'm stuck writing, I could do some of these copy edit suggestions to fix some writing to get myself moving. So I'm really a big fan of this kind of content. It's not easy to get it all in one place. And I love it that it's a newsletter, so it's really tiny. I can throw it in my bag. But I've really found that a lot of newsletters I get with other organizations, I just throw away, but these I don't. So I wanted to put it out there as an actual resource that you might check out. Um, Finally, here's just a couple other things to know about it. I like that if you kind of like cruise through the conference and if you look at some of the information about like actually attending the conference, they have a bookstore where you can feature your published work. So this is something that I think is a really good, just a really good way to promote your work. Like this organization can help do that as well. So I hope these tips are helpful for using the newsletter. I mean, it might be something that, I don't think I need a membership just to get a newsletter, but in this case, I really feel like it's warranted. I mean, to me, it's sort of like a mini scholarly journal on writing, but something that I could read with 5 minutes to spare before a meeting or something like that. So I hope this helped this week and happy writing.